Hey everyone, and welcome back to today's episode. Let me ask you something. Do you have like 1,000 recipes saved on Pinterest but never actually make them? And now you're sort of wondering how to take those recipes and make them glucose friendly? If that sounds like you, this episode is definitely for you. I'm going to share how I use Pinterest to plan meals and snacks that support stable blood sugar. I'll walk you through what I look for in recipes, how I tweak them to fit my needs, and the search strategies I use to discover meal ideas. Plus, I'll share some tips on what to avoid when you're building a glucose-friendly meal plan. I'll be the first to admit I'm guilty of pinning a ton of recipes that I never get around to making. I've had my Pinterest account for years, and while I've pinned hundreds, maybe thousands of ideas, I find myself going back to the same handful of recipes over and over again anyways. So Pinterest can totally be a practical tool to build your glucose-friendly meal plan that works for really any lifestyle. It's a real asset for your health goals. So let's get into today's episode and find out how we can make healthier recipes that are glucose-friendly. I'm Katie, and welcome to the Glucose Globe Show, where I'm making blood sugar balance for non-diabetics not just important, but actually fun and approachable. I'm a girl mama, problem solver, wellness advocate, and someone who turned a deep dive into metabolic health into real-life results, like healing my insulin resistance and unlocking my fertility journey. This podcast is your backstage pass to everything I've learned, and I'm still learning about glucose, longevity, how to beat your cravings, and stop feeling hangry. Why does this all matter? Because when your blood sugar's in check, everything just feels better, from your mood to your energy and overall health. Here we'll talk about glucose tracking, eating for balance, optimizing your health, fertility, navigating the healthcare system, a holistic approach to wellness, and biohacking your way to feeling amazing for years to come. I'm in the trenches right alongside you, working daily to manage my own glucose and have more energy for the things I love. So whether you're ready to kickstart your health, deepen your understanding of how food impacts your body, or just want a relatable space to learn and grow, you're in the right place. Let's get glowing. Starting off with, when I'm scrolling through Pinterest, I think there's some buzzwords, and I sort of want to start with, I'm not sure if I love healthy recipes. I think there's a lot of like healthier granola bars, healthier pasta dish, healthier whatever it is, right? Like there's a healthier version of your favorite fast food dish. Okay, that's great. I'm not against the word healthy, but I think sometimes it's like, all right, it's healthier, but is it glucose friendly? I'm not sure. Not always. And I'm not against recreating your favorite dish from a restaurant, because it's definitely probably going to be healthier than if you would go to the restaurant and it's made with industrial seed oils and all kinds of other crap that you don't want to be consuming. So I don't want you to hear me wrong. I still think you can search for your healthier, like copycat recipes. I do that. One thing that comes to mind right now is the turkey chili at Panera. I do a copycat version, and I found that on Pinterest. So I'm just trying to say that I think you're going to find healthy is probably going to be a key search term, and you're going to see it a lot, like healthy dinners for your family this week, things like that. So I see that a lot when I'm scrolling, because obviously those are the things I click on, and my home feed is going to be showing me things like that. Some things I focus on are simple. I'm not usually a big recipe person. I do follow some, but when I'm building out my plate, sometimes it's easier for me to just think in the different components versus some big recipe that has 100 ingredients and endless chopping of all the things. I'm really not into that. On occasion, maybe I'll get the urge to want to chop up literally everything from the produce department, but typically that's not really my jam. I'm focusing on things that use whole and unprocessed ingredients, things that have a good balance of protein, healthy fats, fiber, and good carbs. And sometimes I'll go rogue and just make recipes of my own. For example, if I find a pasta dish, I might sub in a pasta alternative like chickpeas, pasta, or spaghetti squash. If I see something with tortillas, I think there's a lot of things with tortillas. Like I might switch that out for like a veggie, like I'll stuff like zucchinis with enchiladas. That's something I've shared in the past. So I'll switch out the starchy carbs like tortillas and chips and all that for a non-starchy veggie alternative. So zucchini is really great alternative. Bell peppers, like stuffing them. So I'll kind of search for stuff like that. Reason being is then I can sort of then rebuild the plate. So I can take out the starchy carb and I can add in the types of carbs that I would like to see on that plate and sort of build in the fats and the fiber and protein along with that. So here's some things that I'm searching for and keywords that sort of align mostly with glucose-friendly eating. So I'll search for like paleo type stuff. Basically, if you're not familiar with the paleo diet, it's eating foods similar to what our ancestors might have consumed. So the focus is on whole, unprocessed foods that could be hunted, fished, or gathered. It emphasizes high-quality proteins, healthy fats, fruits, vegetables, nuts, seeds, avoiding processed foods like refined sugars, grains, dairy, and legumes. So it's really mimicking this like cave-like diet, supporting health, reducing inflammation. So I do not fully follow a paleo diet. I don't identify with one certain diet, but this is a search term I use because there are really great recipes in this category that help me build a glucose-friendly meal. Another search term I'm going to use is Whole30 recipes. So if you haven't heard of Whole30, it's basically a 30-day elimination diet designed to reset your eating habits and identify potential food sensitivities. So during this program, if you follow it exact, participants eliminate foods like sugar, alcohol, grains, legumes, dairy, processed additives, all that kind of stuff. The focus is on consuming whole and nutrient-dense foods like vegetables, fruits, proteins, healthy fats, all the things that we talk about on here all the time. And then after 30 days, foods are gradually reintroduced to observe their impact on energy, digestion, mood, and overall health. So again, I don't specifically follow Whole30, but reading that and thinking about what Whole30 is, it's definitely recipes and foods that I would like to incorporate if I'm like stuck and feeling uninspired. Other things I might search for: gluten-free. So I do not have a gluten sensitivity. There is some of that in my family, so I am maybe more aware of it than the average person. I would say I oftentimes adapt things or have to make an alternative meal for people in my family that have a gluten sensitivity. But I also search for gluten-free items for our home because oftentimes they have flour alternatives or sweetener alternatives. Obviously, you could swap those things out, but I just feel like those recipes are already made that way, and it's just easy for me to incorporate that into our snacks or meals. If I'm feeling like it, I can tolerate dairy, but occasionally I would search dairy-free. Maybe I'm just looking for something different. Every once in a while, we have to switch it up. I will search for keto recipes. I think there's some caveats there. There's sort of good keto and bad keto, I guess. So loading up on just tons and tons of cheese and maybe overdoing it on the fat has its problems. On a future episode, I'm going to talk about why keto specifically didn't work for me. I messed up some things in my health trying to follow keto, trying to fix my glucose, and that just didn't work for me. But I think starting with keto and then building out, again, like I do with other things, would create a glucose-friendly meal. So keto and low carb sort of go together. So let's just say it was a Philly cheesesteak bowl or a pizza bowl. Then, so those are mostly going to be carbs and or protein and fats. Then and probably fiber with some veggies. And then I can add in my choice of carbs. So it's no longer maybe necessarily keto or low carb, but I could add in corn or sweet potatoes or something else to round out the meal versus some starchy, tortilla or chips or whatever it is. Maybe it's rice. I can kind of build out the carb I want. So I can start with like a keto or quote unquote low carb recipe and make it my own. I've also talked about, unstuffed recipes. So like egg roll bowls or unstuffed peppers. It's kind of more in a skillet and you can add rice, the zucchini enchiladas. So again, veggies are like a really great substitute for the more carb heavy or starchy options. Other things I'll search, I like nut butter based desserts or snacks. So peanut butter, almond butter, cashew butter, those sorts of things. I'll search like limited ingredients. So like snacks with 5 ingredients, or maybe you'll find something with 3 ingredients, something really simple. So I'll search that. I also try and find recipes that focus on more kind of Mediterranean style. So that's another search term you could use. Olive oil is really key in that diet. Avocado oil is a great base. So those are some things I search for. Not all inclusive, but definitely a really great start. And then if you're kind of searching for those things, you may be shown other things that could be in those same categories or be correlated with. Things I try to avoid or limit when I'm looking at recipes. Let's just talk about things I'm maybe like skipping. Not all the time. I'm going to start with flour, white or whole wheat. So I really try and limit flour. So I do make sourdough. This is a new thing. Early last year I started doing, I think it was spring of 2024. So there is all-purpose flour in that. Sourdough for me doesn't seem to be a big deal. So overall, that's probably my primary source of white flour. I do occasionally make homemade pizza, whole wheat, with some white flour. But I would say overall, these are things that I know that I need to stay away from. Like your traditional cookies, cakes, all that stuff, muffins. I know I am sensitive to the white flour. It is a surefire way to spike your glucose with or without pairing sometimes. It's not worth it. So those are things I don't do. Almond flour, coconut flour, really great. Added sugar, I use natural sweeteners like honey or maple syrup, which of course is added sugar technically. I wouldn't say the body really distinguishes much between that and other types of sugar like table sugar. Or of course sugar has so many names, different syrups and stuff like that. I would say I feel more comfortable using those in moderation. Vegetable oils, talked about this, I opt for the healthier fats like olive or avocado oil. Also avoid mostly white flour pasta. Same thing, it's just in pasta form. Most of the time, white flour pasta is going to spike my blood sugar. Recipes that rely too much on starches like tortillas, rice, buns, potatoes. I try not to include these every day to avoid like overloading on the starchy carbs. I'm not saying I never have these. Like I have tortilla alternatives. I eat rice, occasionally a bun or potatoes. Not so much buns. I like the sourdough and Ezekiel bread, but if we're having a hamburger, yes, I'm probably having a bun most of the time. So when I'm planning things, though, I'm usually planning for leftovers. So I don't want every single day to have like tortillas and rice and potatoes and a lot of starchy items, like components in the meal, because then I'm going to end up with all these leftovers and it's going to be really hard to kind of plan a full day out. So that's kind of things I'm looking at when I'm planning individual days and then weeks, kind of looking at them together. Another thing I don't want to say I avoid, but soups that are flour based, they're usually low in fiber and fat. So one of my favorites, like broccoli cheddar soup, like I love that, but it's not super glucose friendly, if I'm going to be honest. It's not going to keep your glucose levels stable. If I want that, I would definitely pair with extra protein or fiber. Have that I would have before the soup, like a loaded up salad with dressing and avocado and probably some veggies like cauliflower, things like that, carrots. If you're gonna do a flour-based soup already, probably like skip the croutons, stuff like that. So you don't probably need to add crackers to that. You're just continuing to add more carbs on top of the soup, and I think soup is glorified as always healthy, but that's not always the case, especially when it's flour-based. And then I talked about this, but overly complicated recipes with a ton of ingredients I won't use again. For me, I don't need to go and spend all this extra money on all these ingredients that don't really line up with anything else that we normally make. And then it turns out that normally those are recipes that I don't make again. So then I'm like stuck with all these ingredients that I don't need. So those are just some things I try and limit or avoid. Not completely avoid in most cases, but really conscious of those things. Just a few other examples that I wanted to point out. I talked about the bowls and sort of the low carb and building in your carbs. Desserts like almond flour and nut butter based treats just tend to have more protein and fat, which lowers your glucose spike compared to traditional desserts with white flour and sugar. So I'm going to tell you a quick story. So there's a little cafe at our church, and my daughter likes to get a cookie on Sunday mornings, and it's just a special thing, like our muffin time or cookie or whatever. And she gave me a few bites the other day, and I was wearing my CGM, and my levels started spiking really high from just a couple bites, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is ridiculous. I think I didn't want to know it, but I did know what was going to happen. I mean, I'm not wearing a CGM all the time, and I'm like, oh, what's a few bites? But it just happens quicker, and then all of a sudden you crash, and then you're hungry, and it's just not a good place to be. And if someone tells you almond flour or the nut butter, cookies are too high in fat, no, they're not. It's going to keep you satiated. It's going to keep you full and content. And if you have it with a well-balanced meal, I am not worried about the fat content in one or two treats like that. The other thing is, I want to just talk briefly about macros. Maybe you track your macros, your carbs, fat, and protein. It's a tool oftentimes people use to build muscle, lose weight, change their body composition. Mixing things together, like casseroles or bakes or stir fries, things like that. You could be tracking your macros to a T and doing really well, but I still find that my glucose can spike even if the meal was on point for macros. So for example, it could be the sauce or mixing in pasta or rice, in a stir fry, and mixing them together for whatever reason can produce a larger spike versus, I said earlier, I like to build out separate components of my meal, and then you could load up on the fiber first and then eat the starchy stuff like the rice. So I will just say you could be thinking things are good, but if you eat something like a casserole or stir fry or something where it's all mixed together and you're feeling hungry a little while later, that might be why. There could be something in that meal that just, maybe there wasn't enough fiber, or maybe there wasn't enough fat. Oftentimes I find that it's not enough fat for me. The fat definitely helps slow down the glucose release into your body. Fiber is going to do that too, but if you're eating a stir fry or something, you're probably getting a lot of really good fiber in there. So it could be you need to add a few slices of avocado or something like that. So just knowing that there are different things you can be doing to keep your levels in check. And you may think you're doing okay. And I'm not saying this to scare you, but it's more just like an awareness. Like when I'm mixing things together, it might not give me the same result as eating like salmon, rice, and broccoli separately versus a full stir fry. Just something to keep in mind. To close this out, Pinterest, I know it's an amazing tool, and it can be an amazing tool for building a glucose-friendly meal plan if you know what to look for and how to tweak recipes to fit your need. I really hope today's episode gave you some inspiration and practical tips for your own meal planning. I can't wait to hear some of the things you're making. If you're looking for some inspiration, send me a message on the type of things you're looking to make, and I can start to build out some of my favorite recipes or even things I'm making. So send me a message on Instagram at GlucoseGlowUp, and we will help you out. And I hope you all have a great week, and until next time, keep on glowing.